All righty. And we are officially underway here. Jeannie, it is so great to have you here today. I am
Thank you.
really looking forward to diving into all this stuff today.
I am too. It seems like whenever we get together and chat about this, we have a lot to say.
I know. I feel like we're becoming fast friends here.
Excellent. Thanks for having me, Brian.
Absolutely. Yeah, it should be a good chat. Where are you calling in from today?
I am in Oak Park, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. So,
okay. If you notice, I've got a slightly different background going on here compared to our podcast recording last week.
yeah. Where are you?
I've relocated out to, so typically in Brooklyn, currently out in Rockaway, getting some time by the beach out here. My family's got a place, so
Nice. Nice.
Yep, all good. So kicking us off here. So my name is Brian. I am the founder and CEO of RedRoute. We are a CX startup. Just raised $7 million a couple months ago. Mostly serve fast up and coming e-commerce brands, and I am joined today by the one and only.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jeannie Walters, and I am founder and CEO of a company called Experience Investigators, and have been really providing consulting and learning and teaching and all those things around the issue of customer experience for more than 20 years. So I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, it's good. And part of what's fun about you and I getting together is in a lot of ways, like I am a newbie to this space, right? My introduction to this space is just in the last few years starting this business, and you have really seen the history of it and the way that it has evolved. So we've had some good chats, and should be good to dive in. So I think like the first question kicking us off, as you and I have been talking, this question of customer experience, right? Like customer experience is sort of a buzzword, means different things. Yeah, we're gonna have some slides here for those that appreciate the visual element of it and don't just want to look at our faces the whole time. But I think that there's this question of like, what exactly is customer experience? It means different things to different organizations. Is it like a buzzword? Is it just like a employee marketing thing? Is it surveys? Is it support? Like, so when you think of customer experience, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, I think this is such an important place to start because a lot of times, and I love that we're talking about the fact that it's not magic, because I think sometimes we treat it like it's magic. Like we're like leaders say, well, if we talk about it, everybody will be on board, right? And when we say we want to deliver a great customer experience, everybody knows what that means. So we just need to tell everybody. And if it's just talk, it is really hard to make it part of how you do business, how you really are delivering experiences. So I'm a big believer that you have to define what this is first. You have to create a mission statement around it. You have to create what does success look like and how will we measure it? And I think one of the things we're tackling today is really, connecting the dots too between employee experience and customer experience. Because if your employees are not empowered to, do the right things, know what success looks like, and have the right tools to do so, then it's really hard to say, okay, everybody, deliver a great customer experience. And the way we look at it, it's really about the end-to-end experience. It's very proactive. It's not just about reacting to service issues. That's certainly part of it. But it's really about being proactive and intentional about designing that journey for your customers and then putting in the right tools and feedback mechanisms and everything so you can continue to evolve that on behalf of your customers for the long term. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah. And I think that it's an important question for people to drill in on, especially under kind of the overhang of everything going on with the economy right now, right? It was easy for executives to sit in a boardroom and right, it was an industry and a movement that had a lot of momentum. It was easy to grab off a chunk of budget, allocate it towards a customer success program, and kind of go with it. But now, right, everybody's back to the table and they are looking down kind of their balance sheet and saying, what do we need to keep? What do we need to get rid of? And if you don't even know what this line item means, then it's going to be really hard to make that decision. And really, in most cases, people will probably default to getting rid of it. So I think that it's an important question. And there are, right, you got to consider, what does it report into, right? Where in the org is it reporting into? What does it actually, right? What reports into it, right? Is customer service something that is rolled under and completely controlled by it? Or is it kind of an independent entity? So I feel like in a lot of these situations, when people are sitting down and they're trying to figure out, right, there's been macro changes around us, what should the strategy be going forward? You have to start from the place of like, okay, let's define, as you said, what this means in our business and what we're trying to get out of it and what the vision for it is inside the company.
Yeah. And I think beyond that too, we have to appreciate that it's a discipline. It's something that we should be really providing the right efforts, the right reporting, everything else, because I always think about, can you imagine going down a balance sheet and being like, well, I think sales might go down in the next couple of months, so we should probably get rid of sales, right? Like, let's just get rid of the sales team. We would never do that as business people because we know that that's part of having a successful business. I make the same argument for customer experience. If you are intentional about it, and if you understand that delivering better service, delivering better experiences proactively for your customers will drive winning results. You will get higher employee retention. You will get higher customer retention. Customers will tell others about you. You'll have lower service costs. All of those things come together. That's what we're trying to do in business. We're trying to increase revenue and decrease expenses. Investing in customer experience and being smart about the ways we do that is a winning strategy no matter what else is happening. But we treat it like it's this nice to have. Like if we don't invest, it's okay. Oh, good. We're getting questions. Awesome.
Jeannie, are you?
Okay. Off the bat here, I too believe that micro moments, thank you. That's something I talk about a lot. Really matter as a CX leader. How have you seen others identify those micro moments and ensure we're preventing the negative ones and striving for the positive ones? All right. Spiciest question. Awesome. Well, Ben, thanks for joining us today and thanks for the question. So when I talk about micro moments, what I'm talking about are those moments along the customer journey that sometimes are overlooked or neglected because we don't think they're hugely important. But if we really drill into this, every single micro moment, which are these small moments we have with customers, sometimes it's through service conversations. Sometimes it's things like packaging or how we invoice or the little messages that we put out to customers. All of those little things, if we are not really paying attention to that, then what happens is we start chipping away at trust. So I define micro moments as those moments that either build or erode trust. So when we're talking, for instance, about, service, when we're talking about customer service, having something that feels really fast, that feels really personalized, all of those moments along the way, that builds trust throughout the journey. So as far as how you identify this, you roll up your sleeves and you do what we call micro mapping, which is really digging in to specific parts of the journey and thinking through it from the customer's perspective in kind of excruciating detail. And what I mean by that is if somebody calls into a contact center, a lot of times when we're looking at that from our perspective as business leaders, we are very process driven and we say things like, well, we answer the phone, this happens, this happens. But what is really happening is that person might be trying to solve a problem that shouldn't have happened to begin with. So they're already in an emotional state. What does that look like? How can we make it easier for them? What happens when they're on hold? What happens when they're transferred? All of those things. Getting into that detail so that we can look for opportunities to create more positive moments for them, to eliminate those negative ones if possible. But really, it's all about looking for opportunities to deliver more positive moments because things will happen. We are going to have negative things happen with our customers. I wish I could say that wasn't the case, but hey. And so the more we invest in those positive moments, the more trust we have when those negative things happen. So I hope that helps. Good question.
Yeah, great question. Thank you for chiming in, Ben, and certainly encourage everybody that is here with us live to do the same. That is off to a good start there. And I have declared beforehand, whoever has the quote unquote spiciest question will be getting a undecided, undisclosed, undetermined present of some kind directly from me after the show.
Now I want
Uh,
it.
yeah, exactly. So I think the other thing there is, right, this is where the data around CX is so rich, and it can come from so many different places. So many different like departments inside the organization can have access to this data.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this balance that everybody, right, be it inside of CX or even beyond CX, needs to have, where you're identifying your rocks, your big items, your big bets that you're going to be making in a quarter, in a year, as a business, whatever it might be. But there's also, right, you need to find those low hanging fruit opportunities also,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
there can be a like over indexing and over focus that happens on the big things, where it's like you could have spent this week and you could have cleaned up and you could have improved 25 small moments, and just like kind of making decisions based on, yes, the impact that something's going to have, but also how much effort and how much certainty are also tied to that thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you bring up a really, really important point, which is, if we're only focused on the big things, we're going to miss those moments that are, number one, they might be really simple to solve, right? They might be something that we can say, oh, wait, we can fix that today for our customers. And those small moments add up. And so when we're looking for ways to kind of justify or to show return on the investment around customer experience, we have to look at both those things. And this is where prioritization can get a little tricky, because the chief marketing officer says, well, we have to invest in this part of the organization. And the chief financial officer says, well, we have to reduce these expenses. And if you are trying to solve everything all at once, that can be a challenge internally as well. So we always recommend, like, this is why you have to define success. Because if you and I have different ideas of success, then we're going to want to prioritize different things. We have to make sure we understand what are our goals as an organization and what are the promises that we've made to our customers. And we have to live up to both of those things. And so that's how you can really get clear about, okay, we're going to focus on this big rock, which might take some doing, and we might need, to build out a team or whatever we need for that. But then we're also not going to lose sight of the fact that as these moments come up that we can solve, those quick wins for our customers, let's go ahead and prioritize those, along the way as well. So it all comes back to this idea of, let's stop treating this like it's magical. Let's stop treating it like it's just words on paper. This is a business practice. It's how we show up all the time for our customers. And so, the same discipline that goes into a sales strategy or marketing strategy, we have to apply that to a customer experience strategy as well.
100%. And I think, oh, here we go.
Here we go.
Jeannie, you want to take that one?
Sure. And then I'd love
Yeah.
your take on this too.
Yeah.
So, do you have a favorite metric when examining? I really don't believe there's one magic metric. I think that we have to look at things in perspective. And I also think sometimes if we focus too hard on metrics, what happens is what I call, we become number narrators and we don't give it context. We don't dig into, okay, why did net promoter score go down? Or why are we getting an influx of inquiries into our contact center? If we're not looking at those numbers within context and then doing something about it, they're just numbers. So I really believe that you need some nuance around this. You need to understand a few different points, both experiential data, like feedback from customers, and operational data. Like, first of all, how are they behaving? What's happening? But then also what's happening on the inside of our organization that gives us those insights as well. So what do you think, Brian?
Yeah, I think that there's like one of the beauties of CX is all of the data that it creates and all the data that it has access to, but it can also have a blinding effect where you kind of like get so deep into it that you kind of like lose sight of kind of like the basic human nature element of it. And I also think with the metrics, right, it's different at different stages of the journey, right? So at a like initial touch point, a marketing touch point, you're looking at different things and the goals are different, and thus the way that you're measuring it is going to be different versus a post-sale touch point versus a like loyal customer versus an in-store experience. So I think that the best way to think about CX is to look at all of it and understand the full picture, and then understand at different stages what you're optimizing for.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep. I agree. Excuse me. And I think the whole idea of like one magic metric, it's so appealing. Because wouldn't that be a lot easier if we could just be like, hey, this is how we're doing? And I think that's one of the challenges that customer experience has, because people say, well, we need to attach ROI to it, which we absolutely can, but it takes a little doing. You have to understand who your organization is, who your customers are, what your goals are, et cetera, and what you can measure.
Yeah. I think my last thought there, and then we will jump into this next question here. I kind of think about it that like what a company sells is their product and their experience.
Mhm.
And it really is both of those things. And for so many companies, like the goal, right? Like the founding vision behind it is we want to create a beloved brand, right? Like
Mhm.
that is ultimately the goal. And the goal, right? So then that becomes the goal of the product and the goal of the experience. So I think that like if you were to put it under a single North Star, that is the North Star that I would kind of put it under.
Mhm. Mhm.
And if that's not your goal as a company, then identify whatever the goal is for the company and nest it under that North Star.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the other part to that is we've seen a lot of disruption in the last few years that is experience-based, because we get really complacent sometimes in certain industries, and we start looking around and thinking, "Well, everybody does it this way, so that's how we do it." And then a disruptor comes along and says, "Hey, there's a better way." You can do that with your own company. Like I call them disruptor days. Host a disruptor day in your own place and say, "What would we do if we were starting today and we had a magic wand? Like if we didn't have the challenges of legacy systems and all the things, right? How would we do it?" Because sometimes that sparks this idea of innovation around experience. But you're absolutely right that like quality product is absolutely part of the customer experience. So you can't just hide behind the
Yeah.
experience either. You have to do both.
Yeah. Next question here, Robert. Appreciate you chiming in. Love the attempts to break down definition of spicy. So the question here is a little bit of like who does the buck stop with, right?
Mhm.
And who's ultimately responsible for it. And this is something that we've spoken about quite a bit on our podcast and with a number of people. And my conviction here is that there needs to be executive buy-in and executive they need to be bought into it. It needs to not be like oh, they like whatever, we're like made a deal internally with some other exec and like this was the give, so they're just going ahead and doing it.
Mhm.
So I think that it needs to start at that leadership exec level with buy-in, and then there needs to be the team that is going in there and kind of aligning on, right, as you talk about, with what is the vision for this team? What is the vision for the experience of our business?
Mhm.
And then the team kind of has the ability to take and run with it from there. What do
Yeah.
you think?
Yeah, I think that we are often asked to kind of change CX through a tactic or a tool instead of looking at it as this is a team sport in the operation. Everybody needs to understand that customer experience is something that we're dedicated to, and they have to understand what that means. And so if we can get there, we can actually break it down into specific missions and goals for different teams. But I have seen a lot of customer experience goals out there that are fluff. I mean, one of them was to provide friendly customer service. And I said, great. What does that mean? How do you know if you're doing it? Let's figure that out. There are so many like that out there. And then after a year, everybody looks at it and says, well, did we do that? I don't know. I guess it didn't work. I guess we should get rid of our CX team. And it's like this horrible cycle. So I think part of what we have to, we call it intentional leadership around customer experience. You have to be intentional, you have to be proactive, because otherwise everybody's reacting and everybody's making their own judgment calls about what's right. And so defining that success up front, creating that mission statement, really getting clear on what goals are and how to measure those, that's what really creates the right kind of environment for success, because then everybody talks to each other and has buy-in. And actually, a report came out in 2022 that CX leaders are saying that the most important part of success is buy-in from leaders and from other parts of the organization. That is the most important. So we have to build that kind of culture of coalition around customer experience.
100%. So one more question, Andrew. Thank you for hopping in here.
I know, I love the questions. Thanks,
Yeah, I
everybody.
know, it's fantastic. Okay, how would a success manager go about getting buy-in to invest in CX?
Yep. Here we go. This is exactly what we were
So
talking
yeah,
about, right?
continue on that thought, and then I'll piggyback
Yeah.
in behind you.
Well, I always say we have to speak the language of business. We can't just say, like, we want to deliver great experiences for our customers. We have to tie that to what are we doing for the organization. So if you're talking to your chief financial officer, and this is where, thinking through investment in tools and technology and things like that can really be part of it, because what you're trying to say is, if we invest here, we're going to decrease the time of service for customers. We're going to decrease the likelihood that they are going to stop being a customer. We're going to increase likelihood of retention, which saves money, which improves customer lifetime value, which improves employee experience and retention. And in today's market, that's something everybody's concerned about too. So we have to think about, who are we talking to and what do they care about? And then let's make it real for them. So if we can invest a little bit, if we can retain, there are stats out there that say if you retain 5% more customers, you actually get a 25 to 95% return on that investment. And so when we're looking at, talking to these leaders, we have to speak like business leaders. And so that's a key part of this. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, I think that this is a great question. So I follow this from, right, if the goal of the company is to build a beloved brand, then the closest metric with which you can measure that is customer lifetime value, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how deeply are people engaging with your business? How much do they want it, right? And it can get into other things around like community engagement and galvanizing community. But I think CLTV is it is a big metric. It is already a boardroom metric, and it is heavily influenced by CX. So the biggest thing that I've seen, and we'll go into like everything going on at a macro level right now with the economy, but CX is one of those things that's kind of sitting on the fence right now, and execs don't know which bucket to put it into. On one hand, especially if support is rolling into it, it is a significant cost inside the business, which then aligns with the goal of, hey, we want to reduce costs of the business given what's going on with the economy. But at the same time, at least everybody at like a fundamental, like conceptual level understands that the experience ties to this customer lifetime value metric.
Mm-hmm.
But it can get lost in this fluff stage, or it can get lost in like, hey, I'm pulling some metric from Forbes about how like when customers have a bad experience, they leave. But like really that stuff it's so fluffy in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
So the organizations that I have seen that really have executive buy-in, and these are also the organizations that are increasingly in this moment, like doubling down behind customer experience, are the ones that have internally in their own data created the tie between those metrics.
Yep.
Right. So they've identified these are the key touch points in the journey, and then they've tied the different kind of like outcomes at that touch point and like the data that's received at that touch point into what is the effect that it has on customer lifetime value.
Mm-hmm.
And when you create that relationship, then the impact becomes very measurable, right? So like, let's use the customer service example, right? If you just say, we're going to split into two buckets, right? Bucket one is going to be people that have a negative customer service experience after initial purchase. And bucket two is going to be people that have a positive customer service experience or no customer service experience after purchase. And then you look 3, 6, 12, 24 months down the road at that cohort of customers, and you say, what's the difference in their lifetime value? What's the difference in whatever these metrics are that you're using internally to drive at this this idea of bringing people closer into the brand, driving at lifetime value.
Mhm.
So I think that once you create the data tie in your own data, right? Not some Forbes article that's like abstract and fluffy, but like in your
Yep.
own data, you create the relationship to at least some point in the journey that you consider high leverage. And I think that service for a lot of organizations is that.
Mhm.
Then what you can do is you can start to, right, once you have the metrics behind it, then you can start to move those metrics, right? And we talked about like low hanging fruit versus big bets. Like always start with quick wins, right?
Mhm.
Always start with quick wins, create the data relationship, move the needle by 3%, right?
Right.
Show that for the last cohort of customers, it has this effect 24 months down the road, and show that for this cohort of customers, you ran an experiment and you improved that number by 3% or 5%.
Mhm.
And then you will start to kind of like get the attention, and the whole thing will start to be able to build momentum, right? Momentum is
Yep.
when positive things continue to happen, right? So you get a win on the board. Not only can you promote that upward inside your organization, you can promote
Mhm.
that across your organization as well. And it all starts to build momentum.
Yep. And I think the other part here that's tied to employee experience as well is that when you find those quick wins and you find what works, that's something you can turn into a best practice throughout the organization. So you might see that happen in service, but really what it comes down to is, oh, we need to be faster in our responses. That's what is winning for customers. And so let's make sure we're doing that in sales. Let's make sure we're doing that in customer success. And let's make sure we're doing that in billing and invoicing and all the points along the journey, because that's something that, will then build that momentum you're talking about from those quick wins to that longer term outcome that everybody is looking for. So it's
Exactly.
yeah, it is really important though to find what works in your organization, connect those dots, and then again speak that language. Like we have to just talk about this like it's a real thing because it is.
Yeah, 100%. Which is a great segue into this next question here. Thank you, Caroline. Um, like, right, what does a successful mission
Mhm.
statement look like? I imagine so to me, this is right. It depends on the company, right? And it comes back to like what is the mission of the business, right?
Mhm.
And like
Mhm.
what is the brand promise, right?
Right.
What is your organization ultimately like? What do you want to be known for? Like what do
Mhm.
you stand for in this world? And then you can start to, right, the different pieces can fall under it, right? It's very normal, right? People make a very direct tie all the time between the company's vision and the product that they're building, and like the vision for the product. The instant that you start thinking about the business not only selling the product but also selling the experience, then suddenly it will start to
Mhm.
nest under in the same sort of ways. So for
Mhm.
example, for me at RedRoute, like we focus on one, the measurable impact that we're delivering to customers, and the second thing that we focus on is the ease with which that impact can be achieved, and that shines through in the product and the way that the product is designed and the strategy behind the product. But then we also think about it from an experience standpoint, right? So
Mhm.
for us, when we're sitting down and we're mapping our experience, it would be antithesis to the vision of the company to have an experience that like required people to go through long drawn out processes, right? So like,
Right.
right, are you going to have a self-serve buying experience where people can kind of go down the journey that they want and activate quickly? Or are you going to say, hey, like insert all of your information into a form and we'll see you in like 2 weeks on a demo with an SDR, and then you'll like get to somebody else. These become very easy decisions for us. And then we can also start to, right, nest these like little moments as we
Mhm.
spoke about with that first question, where it's like, right, we know where we want to have those little wow moments, if you will, right? We know
Yep.
what those little wow moments should represent for us, because there's that clear vision of for the company, and then the understanding that that not only boils down into the product, but it also boils down into the experience.
Right. Right. And that's a great example. And I think part of what's happened that we've seen is that, and the reason I get so like crazy about having a CX mission statement is because a lot of organizations, especially ones that have been around for a while, big organizations, corporate organizations, they have mission statements, but they don't even address the customer. They don't even think about the customer in those mission statements. It's things like shareholder value or being best in class, but it doesn't really get to that level of what are we doing for our customers? How are we showing up no matter what product we're selling, no matter what, line of business they're interacting with, how do we show up? And so we've actually created a template for a customer experience mission statement, and it takes into account everything you just said, like what is the mission of the company? What is the brand promise? And then how can we get realistic about this? Because the other thing that happens is, like you brought up ease and how important that is. Well, that means that sometimes you have to make trade-offs, right? You have to say, you know what, that process would work better for us, but we're going to figure out a way to make it easier for the customer. And because you have that guiding light, you all know to do that. Sometimes we have to make those trade-offs. So if we don't have that mission, it's really hard. And I think the question was around examples. Some corporate mission statements work for this, some don't. So I would say just, if you want to follow up with me, I can send you to the template that we have for CX mission statement, but it's really about getting clear about who you are for your customers. All right. What's next, Brian? This is cruising
Yeah, no,
along
we're cruising along. I absolutely love it. The best conversations are the ones where you don't use slides.
That's right.
So we had a couple questions come in, both from Casey and from Steven around ownership, right? And okay, like let's say that there is the executive buy-in and the desire to go in on it. Then what is the right place to put it in the organization? Who is the right person to own it? Should it have its own owner? We see like the full gamut when it comes to this. So I'm curious from your experience, kind of what you think at least are like what are the trends that you see, right? I think an easy starting point, there has to be one owner, right? With everything, right? There's got to be a singular owner. But what effect does it have based on where it is in the organization from your vantage point?
Yeah, I think it works best when the CEO is on board and leading kind of the idea of this. And then some organizations have chief customer officers, chief experience officers, and that's great as long as it's really about, again, building those coalitions, getting buy-in from throughout the organization. What I see that doesn't work is when it's kind of tucked in as just around collecting feedback. So sometimes there's a customer insights group or something like that. If that's not tied to that bigger strategy and to the buy-in from the executive level, then it's really it's collecting information, but not necessarily having the authority to do anything with the insights. And so that's where I see it fall down sometimes. People define customer experience as simply gathering customer feedback data, or as just customer service, or as just customer success. And if you're kind of siloing it, it's not going to be as effective as if you have that leadership at the C-suite to really drive it forward. A lot of CMOs are told, hey, guess what? You're in charge of customer experience too. And that is often where it starts, but then sometimes that leads to, okay, we need another executive here, because chief marketing officers have a lot to do. And so saying you're in charge, sometimes that's not always the greatest way to go.
I do think that if it is the ultimate investment, the ultimate leadership saying we believe in this is having a C-suite role that is attached to it, right? Of course. If it is going to nest under a existing department, the most common ones that we see are either nesting it under marketing, right? Putting it under the CMO, as you're talking about, or nesting it under operations and having it roll into the COO. And it is interesting, like we see different sorts of behavior inside of these teams based on where it's nested. And I think a lot of it is, when it's inside of marketing, there's a lot more experience focus and there's a lot more data tie-in across the journey, right? And it doesn't just get caught becoming exclusively about customer service. It becomes more incorporated. When it's under operations, it becomes more service-oriented. It becomes more cold, hard data driven. And some of the I guess creativity and spice, if you will, that that the marketing team is already thinking about all the time in their day-to-day jobs. Sometimes it will get lost at points of the journey if there's this fracturing where like marketing is responsible for everything from the top, and then there's this almost like handoff point in the experience, and it becomes, and like CX as a function becomes owned by operations, which is really mostly looking at the things that are happening after the customer is clicking buy.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that it really does depend on who those leaders are and their perspective of it too, just like you're saying, because it can be kind of demoted or promoted based on them. And yeah, we just had slides up about how if we do focus on this, the company does better. But we have to make sure that we're thank you. So, when we're looking at this, the thing that always stands out to me about this is, they were 3 times more likely to have significantly outpaced their sectors. So by investing in customer experience in this broader way, you actually are going to outpace your competition. And I think that's something we don't always talk about. It is absolutely a competitive advantage when it's done well. And some of that comes down to leaders and who they are and how they approach it.
And for me, like, I guess I preface this by saying I am a like inherent optimist and glass half full kind of person. But when I look at everything that's going on at a macro level in the world right now, it's kind of this like insane stacking of things here where it's like we had COVID, and then especially kind of inside of our customer base and the organizations that we're serving, right? It was COVID, and then it went straight into everything with like cookieless and like the social ad platforms and everything that was going on there, and like disrupting a significant growth channel, and now straight into everything going on with the economy. And I think that the right, COVID for e-commerce was really like, oh my God, like opportunity, and grow, customer acquisition. And I think as these like big rocks have started to like continue to unfold and these new layers have emerged at a macro level, I think that there's this transition happening where like now it's all about lifetime value, right? And it really is like an LTV world right now. And there's a silver lining in this for brands where it's like, right, I said earlier, right, these companies are starting with this vision of becoming the next, right, name that brand, right? Like the most recognizable, the most beloved brands on the planet are almost always these consumer brands. And that's the vision and that's the dream, right? There's a passion point and a vision of creating that. And then, oh my God, COVID comes, like competition is growing. People are raising venture money. We need to grow acquisition. And it's like, in some ways that was such a divergence from where they started. And now, yes, there are absolutely challenges that come with navigating these times. There are painful decisions being made, right? Like Shopify, for example, with their layoffs just this week. But there's also a very beautiful return to like, it's really about focusing on our customers again. And I think that for an organization that understands customer experience and has created that relationship in their own data inside the organization to understand how it impacts these metrics that matter, that signify that you are building that brand, this is kind of like the golden age for it, and this is the opportunity for it.
Right. Absolutely. And I think I've been around long enough to remember when, in 2008, the financial crisis happened. And, when that happened, I felt like all these leaders looked around and they were like, oh, wait, we need to keep our customers because there is a finite world out there. Like you can only get certain number of customers. I know we all love growth and we all love to focus on that, but at the end of the day, if you're not keeping those customers and you're not keeping them happy, then you're literally just letting money walk out the door every month. And I think this awareness is really about, I like to think it's motivated by both, the business results, if you keep more customers, you lower your acquisition costs, all those things, you get great results, as this slide shows. But it's also, I think, this world that we live in now, like we have so much exposure to everybody's lives now. There's so much more visibility into what everybody's dealing with because we all, have these cameras now where we see like when people's dogs walk by and we see the situation. I feel like, hopefully some of this is also driven by empathy and by really wanting to do the right thing for your customer. And that might be a little optimistic of me, but I like to think that that's motivating some of this too.
100%. Ramsey, thank you for the question here. Regardless of CH friendly, what are viable approaches to compel orgs to buy in for some of the other competing spend line items?
Okay.
Financial headlines. Yeah. So this is what? Yeah, I can share my 2 cents. So it's funny. So I think that a lot of times, right, I come back to, right, the thought that's coming to mind for me is for young people, for people earlier in their career that are trying to kind of like make strides, right, and have an impact in the organizations that they're in. Amongst the best advice that you'll see is identify for your team or for your business what really matters, right? What are the metrics that matter to the business? And then figure out how you in your work can impact that metric, and then be your own kind of ambassador and like make sure that people are aware of the impact that you've had. So I guess I would apply that here, right? Sometimes and I feel this myself, even sometimes, like a buzzword can, right? It's almost like when a word becomes popular, people will make a instinctual decision and they'll put themselves in the yes bucket or the no bucket. And there are people that are like, I'm not about this customer experience hoopla and this, that, and the other. And like, they're not on the hype train, if you will. But I think, right, this is where you need to get, right, you need to tie it to the metrics that matter to the business. So like start at, right, and it depends again where you are in your organization, but if you're talking about selling it up to the exec level, start with a conversation with your executives around what are the metrics that are most important to the business. And ideally you're in a transparent organization where these things are being shared freely and talked about often, but understand like, what are the top 3 goals for the year? What are the top 3 metrics that you're trying to move? And then you don't even need to like, right? Sometimes it's better to not even, right? If the buzzword has created a negative connotation, don't call it the buzzword, right? Just call it like right, we're doing project X to improve metric Y, and metric Y is going to like, that's a metric that we care about as a company, and then go and do it, right? Create that data relationship, put a quick win on the board, show that has happened, and then like, maybe it becomes known as customer experience in your organization. Maybe you create some new term for what it is, but right, again, like if it sits alongside the product as the things that influence the business, then really whatever metric your company is trying to optimize for, there's a way to influence it with a customer experience mindset and a customer experience strategy. And I think that you just need to understand what is the metric that matters and tie it there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I would say if you're not already tracking things like customer churn rate or customer retention rate, those can be kind of straightforward ideas that people can understand. And you can start tying all of that to these experiments that you're doing, right? Like let's try this, let's do something and then see if that impacts this metric, because that metric of customer churn, that tells your leaders, okay, we are keeping customers and keeping their money. And if they are walking out the door, you are not only losing the potential of their future, revenue with you, but you're also investing in the acquisition of not only them, but then the person that has to replace them as a customer. So I think it's also good to talk about loss sometimes, and we don't always do that. But really, if we are looking at, the examples of the last few decades of companies that thought, oh, we're good, we've got it all figured out, right? But they weren't paying attention to the future. So the Borders books and, all of those that were fine, and they looked around and thought they were fine until they weren't, because they weren't paying attention to what customers really wanted. And it was easy to tell themselves stories. So watch out for those stories too, I would just say. But.
Yeah. And so that segues into the next question here, which is about conversational AI. And I think that for me, the conversation, if you will, starts with right. Our CMO here at RedRoute, James, he always loves to say that brand is the sum of every touch point or interaction that somebody has with your business. And right there you have, right, like touch point. And a lot of these touch points are like conversations that are happening, right? And this is where, right, there is a high degree of density in the support part of the organization. And I think that this comes, right, so when you're looking at CX, if you're looking at it at a holistic level, you're looking at the entire customer journey and experience from top to bottom, and you're starting to understand, like, where should we invest, and like, where are the opportunities, where are the problems in probably, and this is a Brian metric, not a, I'm sure that there are stats that back it up, but I don't have them. But from kind of like our experience, 9 times out of 10, the hardest part of the customer experience are these like conversational touch points that are happening.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason behind that is because they are manual. And the expectation is around like speed and like, right, when somebody contacts a brand, the expectation is that they will be where the consumer wants them to be with a good answer fast at any time of day or night or whatever it is. And while a like very simple goal, that is a very hard thing to deliver against, especially when you talk about the idea of every single conversation that we have, we are going to do manually. Right, like that idea would never, that would be a blasphemous idea in a B2C organization for a marketing team, right? Imagine going to your marketing team and saying, every single marketing email that we send, every single SMS that we send, we are going to manually, we're gonna have somebody on the team manually type that and send that. It would like, right? So the ability to automate is a huge kind of like unlock in being able to deliver a good experience. And to me, that is where, right, this is where conversational AI starts to come in, right? So if you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, we've mapped the journey, we understand the data, we're seeing that these like interaction touch points are the hardest part of the experience, where kind of the quality, the grades, the metrics are the weakest, right? I would say that then the next step from there is, the reason why it is so weak is because we are not meeting the basic demand of what the consumers want. And the reason why we're not meeting the demand is because we're doing everything manually, which is insane. And the opportunity is for conversational AI to come in and to fill that gap and to provide that quality on brand experience in a inbound situation, rather than, right, the orchestrating experiences automatically is often thought about from the outbound standpoint. So I guess for me, like at a, right, zooming in from the top with a lot of things that we've been talking about in this discussion, that's where conversational AI fits. And that's where the opportunity here is really big, especially when you start talking about customer lifetime value and like taking a customer and growing them into a brand advocate over time. It's really about, they have swiped their credit card. What is their experience with your brand from that point forward? So much of that, right? Yes, there's the product experience, but so much of it is the customer experience, which is the support experience. And that's where things are falling down. So to me, like, bad customer service is one of these things. And I do not blame the people that have been running these teams at all. I think that they have faced an impossible challenge. But it's one of these issues that it's almost like, wow, like somehow it is 2022. There's everything that exists in the world around us, and customer service is still as bad as it is in as many organizations as it is. And when we talk about silver linings of things like the recession and this return of focus to customer lifetime value, I think that what you are going to see is a major flip of the switch that happens there. And you are going to see, right, the technology is now there. The focus is going to be coming there. It aligns with, right, one of the other benefits is the cost saving element of this. So I think that all of this will come together. And one of the like big benefits that will come from this kind of stage in time at a macro level will be the death of horrible customer service experiences, at least in most organizations. That is my hot take and I guess
I
my
love
mic
it.
drop rant of the day.
I love the prediction though. That would be amazing. Yeah, I think it's so incredible where we are. Just like if you think about the technology and the tools that we have available to us, it can be kind of mind blowing. And I think part of what customers are telling us is, you know what, I want you to know me and help me in my way, and I want it to happen, fast and kind of in the way I do other things. So part of why I think customer service has such a bad rap is because for a long time we were forcing people, right? We were saying you can't contact us online, you can't contact us with your mobile. You've got to actually like use your mobile as a phone and call us for everything. And it was so unpredictable and it was so arduous for customers. And now we have all these options and customers are embracing them. And I think that that's a big part of it. Voice is one of them, right? Like how many times do we talk to our smart speakers, or I talk to my watch every day. I'm like, it's crazy. And so it's just becoming how we do things. And I think that's something that conversational AI is going to enable us to deliver for customers in all these amazing ways, in ways that feel personal and feel human to them. And they are going to embrace these new ways because they already have. It's just a matter of showing up for them in the ways that they already are familiar with.
Totally. Question coming in here. Seth, thank you very much. Seen trending brands hiding phone numbers and even dismissing calls by telling customers to just download the mobile app. Do you recommend this strategy? Seth, I'm not sure if you are aware of what exactly RedRoute does as a business, but it will be a little bit challenging. I will try my best to hide my bias in answering this question. So the phone channel. There has been a massive, almost like PR smear campaign driven by the organizations with an old school of thought around the singular goal of customer service to be reducing spend and reducing cost to drive people away from the phone channel. Right. And that has fueled like everything omni-channel, and we're going to like channel switch people, and we're going to find every way that we can to try and convince people to use these other channels. We are going to hide the number, right? I think that hiding generally is a very interesting like word that you can attach to a lot of like service strategy that has existed, and nowhere is that more present than in the phone channel. And it's been this almost like, I don't know, like 10-year smear campaign around the phone. And the experience has been like so degraded and underwhelming. And yet at the same time, like people still keep calling, and they will hunt and they will find it. And they will call even if the expectation around what they're even going to get when they do has so greatly diminished. So I think that there is, right. And now you're seeing voice, right? And you brought up Alexa, and I think
I was trying not to say that, so we didn't set off all the speakers.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I think I got a Google Home sitting right over here.
Yeah.
But I think that suddenly now, right, with the advent of voice technology, one, like if anybody questioned whether consumers want to speak to technology and want to speak as a way of like interacting, then like that question is out the door, right? Just given the growth that has happened with voice as an interface, it is the number one channel that is used for searching, right, on Google, which is just absolutely insane. Amazing. There are more people that speak their search than that type it. So I think that there, and now, right, with the ability to bring that sort of voice automation technology into the business for these sorts of conversations, when you talk about customer service, now suddenly it becomes a lot more tenable to provide a great experience to these people and to give that voice experience. And you're going to see a turning of the tides. But I'm curious, Jeannie, what your thoughts are here.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the whole hiding service from customers is just so ridiculous, because like I said, they want to do it their way. And there are still many, many, many people who want to call and talk and figure this out. And so if we're hiding that number, I think it's just saying to customers, like, we don't respect your way. And that is a problem. And the flip side of that is usually when they're hiding the service number, they still have their sales number out there. And so that's telling too, right? Like that tells you about the priorities of how they treat customers. So I think there's a lot around that. I have seen this strategy quite a bit lately where they're starting to, uh, want to do everything in a certain channel, just like Brian was talking about. And I really believe that we have we have 5 generations in the workplace now. Those generations handle things differently. People have different points of input. People are doing different things in their lives that makes, switching channels on them or forcing channels on them. I just think that's unfair, to really respecting who they are and what they want. If you have, if you're a growing company, I totally understand. Maybe you can't offer every channel all at once, but you at least have to have those basics covered. And if you've been offering it, taking it away is really challenging for the customer experience as well.
Totally. And the last thing I would say on that point is, right, this idea of hiding, right? A brand tries so hard to get the attention and affection of customers in the marketplace. There's competition, there's noise. Like, it is so hard to get people's attention and to get them to have a positive affinity towards you. And then suddenly now these people are like reaching out to you and they want to engage with your brand, and you are avoiding that and you are trying to limit that. Like, that should be a metric that you want to maximize.
Right.
And I understand in a world where everything is manual that you cannot, it is not financially viable to do that, but that's the opportunity of conversational AI, right?
Absolutely.
Can the automation be so good that these are value add touch points and it becomes a metric to maximize?
And I would love to unpack a little, like, what does good mean? Because I think part of what happens is people think, well, we need that human being to handle everything because of the nuance, right? But really, good could mean, hey, I'm going to get my problem solved really quickly and move on with my life. That is a good experience. And so if we can offer that in a way that feels personal, that is respecting the customer for where they are on the journey, then we might not need a human for all of those things. And we should embrace that and use the human beings for when we really do need that humanity, when there is complexity or nuance or, all these other things that maybe it's a unique situation. That's where we need the human beings. But if it's these things that can be solved quickly and it's automated in a way that feels good for the customer, then that is a total win-win. And we should just embrace that. And I think the flip side of this is on the employee side, right? This is great that we just brought this up, but it's like, if we can reduce the kind of monotony and the efforts of the people serving customers, then they're going to have a better experience and they're going to want to stay with your organization longer. And they're going to deliver better experiences to those customers who they do interact with. So I always think about, I was standing in line at a hotel once and it was a huge check-in line, just ridiculous. And I saw the guy, one of the people at the desk was answering the phone again and again saying, yep, towels are at the pool. Yep. Hang up. Yep. Towels are at the pool. And I was like, oh my goodness, wouldn't that be great if they had some way to automate that in a way, because it would solve the problem, free him up to actually check in people and do what is most important in that moment. So I think there's so much opportunity here when we really look at it holistically as both, how can we make it better for the customer? How can we make it better for the employees? And how does this support the entire customer journey? That's where there's tons of opportunity.
And the biggest fallacy of conversational AI is that it is a bad thing for the employees and it is going to eliminate the employees.
No.
The reality is that being a customer support agent is the #1 churn job in the economy right now and has been for a very long time. And the reason for that is because of exactly what you just said. They are under a endless flood of dealing with, right? People are angry. They've been sitting on hold, whatever it might be. And it's just getting hammered with the same simple question over and over and over again. And it is no wonder, right? It is very easy for all of us to sit here and understand why that would not be a an appealing situation to walk into.
Right. And just a little shout out here to the organizations that also are considering agent well-being, because that's something we haven't always talked about, and it's really important. And now there's a kind of movement to have leadership around that and make sure that we're taking care of those people who are answering those calls, who are in those situations, because they are high stress, they can be negative. And by giving them the right tools, by empowering them, but also really looking after them, that's what can lead to just a better employee experience for everybody. And that leads to a better customer experience.
Absolutely. Okay. We are somehow,
Oh my gosh.
that's coming up on time here. Love all of the questions that we've received. Love that all of you have stuck with us here. We're going to stay for a couple more minutes here, 5 more minutes. So any last questions? Again, a gift is on the line here. Although there
we don't know what.
Ones. Yeah, we don't know what. And you got some stiff competition based on what we've received over the past hour. But any final questions? Jeannie and I are happy to kind of hang out here for the last few minutes and answer away.
And shout out to everybody here who cares about this, who is like looking after your customer experience and figuring out all of these things, because I think that, we kind of joke about it, but not everybody even thinks about this or talks about it or takes a pause in their day to explore these different topics. So the fact that you're showing up here, some of you have heard me say this, but the mission of my company is to create fewer ruined days for customers. And that's the mission of our company, because we really believe it will provide a greater world for everybody. And by being here today and by learning and by, turning the customer experience that you have into something even just a little bit better, that's making a better world. And so I just want to acknowledge everybody for that too.
Yeah. And I think that our hope in doing this, aside from you and I having a lot of fun ourselves talking about this, is hopefully there have been some nuggets that you can take from this conversation, and it sparks some idea for you, or there is kind of something in here that you feel like will help kind of spread and create more understanding inside your organization about this. So we will absolutely be, after the show here, kind of following up with all of you lovely folks. And that has certainly been our goal. All right. Excellent. Great question. So this is actually for anybody that does, and if you don't, you should follow our podcast, Spamming Zero, which is hosted by me and my CMO, James Gilbert. And Jeannie was actually a guest on the show just last week or this week with us. This is a question that we love to ask everybody that comes on. I'm pretty sure that you answered this in the podcast, but why don't you go first, and then I can chime in behind you.
Yeah, I think, this is always a hard question to answer, because there are some great examples, but I like to highlight a local business who, it's a toy store here in Oak Park, Illinois, Geppetto's. And they started this service that, as a parent, I just thought was amazing, where you could actually buy gifts around the holidays. They would wrap them, but then they would keep them for you until Christmas Eve. And I just thought that was so brilliant, because it was understanding what the experience was really like for parents who were shopping around the holidays. And so I just think that's a really unique way to look at it. And it's definitely just an experience. They sold the products. Of course, they gift wrapped, which is always nice, but then they took it that one step further to make it feel like, oh my gosh, you really know me, you know where I am in this journey, and you are solving a problem proactively. So I like to highlight that one.
Such a great example. And for me, I also think of the small business experience, and I think of my favorite establishments, restaurants, bars, whatever it might be around town. And what I love about the experience of going to those places and engaging with those businesses is the personal element of it, right? So in the business context, right, personalization is like the buzzword that's attached to it, but it's this idea of, I'm walking into somewhere, the people that are there know me, right? There's a relationship that exists that continues to be nurtured each time that I am there. They know things about me. There's like a memory element of it. So to me, I think the best experiences come over time, right? It is that
Yep.
it is that slow cooking element of it. And it's not that any one, right? All of us have, there's the connection between an experience and an emotional reaction and a very strong visceral memory. And I think that all of us have those in our own lives. And in some ways, like those can be less intentional by the person on the other side, and they can be really like personal experiences. But from a business standpoint, I really, think of like the deep relationships that are built with places and with organizations that get built up over time as there becomes a relationship, and there becomes kind of like, right, you walk in and they know your name, and that's a great experience.
That is. And that goes to show like how important it is to recognize who you are as a customer and kind of where you are on your journey. And we can do that in large organizations. We can do that with these tools, but we have to be intentional about it. And that's the difference, I think. Those smaller ones, they're intentional because they know that that's what builds the relationship, but it's finite. We can't scale that in a certain way. But now with all these tools and the right data and really saying to a customer, we know who you are, we appreciate you, and we're going to show up for you, showing that we appreciate you. That's really what it's all about.
Absolutely. Okay.
Oh,
So
that's me.
thank you. This has been fantastic,
Yeah,
Jeannie. Thank you
for
so
sure.
much. Thank you so much for joining me here. Any final remarks? Where can people find you?
There you
How do
go.
we keep this relationship going with our audience?
Yeah, for sure. Anybody can reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. I have a couple LinkedIn courses as well on LinkedIn Learning, and you can find everything else at experienceinvestigators.com. But this is so fun, and I'm so like excited about the future, like excited about what we have available to us now to provide better customer experiences. So thank you for all the work you do, Brian.
Absolutely. And same goes for me. I am certainly a regular on LinkedIn and love connecting with people, and certainly would love to hear any thoughts, feedback, follow-up questions, anything that anybody has after the show.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for the great questions.